So if we look at data lock, which is our data loss prevention module, if we look at this image here, it shows in step 1, an employee is trying to send out customer records either via email or by writing it to USB. So they can use their regular client like Outlook or anything, or they could use Hotmail, Gmail, AOL Mail, doesn't really matter. What data lock does is it scours the entire document. It will look for any policy violations. Those policies, remember, exist on the actual machine, so this is done instantly. So if, for example, Social Security numbers or credit card numbers are disallowed, let's say if it encounters 3 or more credit card numbers or 5 or more Social Security numbers, let's say that's a policy. If the email or the document that's trying to be written to USB contains that, the violation will be flagged, and then the software will either do one of two things. It will either block it from going out, or it will allow it to go out and generate a report for administrators to recognize that that information was sent out of the organization. And then if there is no policy violation, it simply allows the email to go out. If we take a look at what the employee actually sees when this happens, in this case we're looking at a Gmail, and the employee is trying to send out customer records via their Gmail account. And what they do, as soon as they hit send, they get this policy violation screen. It shows that they've violated 3 different policies, in this case confidential data, credit card numbers, and Social Security numbers. And they really have one of two options. They can either click accept, in which case this email will simply be blocked from going out, or they can click override, and they can make an override request, in which case an administrator will see in their UI, in their user interface, that someone has requested a policy violation exemption, and they can either accept it or deny it. If they choose to accept it, the employee will simply be able to send the email, even though no matter what happens, a copy of the attachment or the document that was trying to be written to USB will be grabbed, as well as a snippet. And the reason we have that snippet is just to show you very quickly what it was specifically that generated the violation, so that you don't have to go through the entire document to see. It'll be there in red. In this case, we're looking at Social Security numbers that tripped it. And we don't have to open up the entire file to see what actually created it. That way we can make a decision, hey, this should be allowed or this shouldn't be allowed. Maybe it's the CFO and they're trying to send patient records out, or I should say customer records out for insurance purposes. That might be okay. Whereas if they're just trying to send it to their home email address for some reason, that we may disallow.
I've looked at some of the other DLP solutions that are out there, and policy creation is measured in days or even weeks. What have you guys done to simplify that process?
Well, we've spent a lot of time. We really reverse engineered our policy creation engine by focusing on all of the competitive weaknesses. And one of the advantages that we have, remember, is the fact that since our policies are stored at the endpoint, we can make decisions lightning fast. And we've made policy creation almost that easy. So if we look at that specifically in this first policy, first thing you do is you determine when you want the policy to apply. Do you want it to apply when someone's trying to send an email or email attachment, only when they're trying to write to removable media, or do you want it to apply to data at rest? And then you would just simply click the radio button that would be appropriate there. You can determine when you want it to occur. For example, in this case, we're setting an email policy whenever the email is sent, and we've chosen that we're going to scan the body, the subject, and any potential attachments. And if those things have these selected alert words, the alert words being, for example, the actual words that we've set as being important, or it could be regular expressions that we're using that, for example, could be credit cards, so that you don't have to type in every credit card number, or Social Security numbers. It'll actually scan for that, and you can decide how many instances, how many occurrences of each of those you want it to encounter. So it could be 5, could be 10, could be 1, depending on the severity of the potential piece of data.
When I'm doing policy creation, do I have to start from scratch, or do you guys have some predefined policies that I can select from?
We've got predefined policies that can be very specific, and we also have things, for example, as I was mentioning earlier, the regular expressions, so that you don't have to create policies that from scratch, as you said. You could simply say, look, if you encounter anything that is a Social Security number and a credit card, you can group it so that you could say, if you find 3 or more Social Security numbers and 5 or more credit card numbers, I'm going to consider that customer records. Or it could be state names and addresses and things like that. And you can group those together just by clicking on them, so that you don't have to create them from scratch. And then just to continue, in terms of policy creation, the next thing you do is you determine which group you want it to apply to. So you may apply these policies, for example, company-wide. You might just do it to particular departments, let's say the accounting department. And you may also just apply them simply to an individual if you want. And then the last thing you do is you finalize the policy by naming it. You provide a description. You can determine whether you're going to allow it to be overridable or not. You may decide to have certain groups, maybe your management team, with the ability to override, whereas other ones can't. You'll want to determine if you want to upload the context, meaning the actual snippet that generated the violation. If you want to upload the data itself, the email attachment or the file itself that actually contained the violation, whether you want that whole thing to come back to the server or not, and whether you want to put it in report-only mode. So that says, for example, I'm going to go ahead and let this stuff out. For example, let's say you're creating a new policy and you're not really sure how restrictive it's going to be. You can put it in report-only mode, in which case it will allow everything to go out, but it'll give you a full report so that you can watch it very quickly and see, wow, this is generating a lot of false positives. I think I need to tighten this policy up. Or you might say, no, it's working perfectly. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it into enforce mode and block stuff from going out. And that's pretty much an overview of how quick and easy it is to create a policy. You click Finish, and from that point forth, that policy will apply to everyone in the groups you selected.
And how specific are the policies? Are they global, departmental, individual user? How does that work exactly?
You can really choose that. So you can create a policy and then you just click the organizational groups that you want. If you're running Active Directory, for example, and you're using those Active Directory groups, you could just apply it to several departments, the entire company, or down to the individual level if you so desired.
And do I have to recreate my Active Directory groups, or do you guys automatically pull that in?
We'll automatically pull it in. So you don't have to retype everything. It'll just grab them automatically, and then you can choose to create policies for individual groups if you want, or you can just create policies that go company-wide, depending how complex you'd like those policies to be.
And does that mean that if I had two users that use the same computer on, let's say, different shifts, that I could give them each different access rights?
Yeah, so for example, you may have one employee that's pretty unrestricted. They can do pretty much anything they want, maybe a few, certain categories of websites that are blocked, whereas another employee may have very restricted access. Maybe they only need a few websites to do their work. You could actually whitelist, meaning block everything except those particular websites. And when employee number 2 goes to employee number 1's computer and logs in, automatically those policies will go over, and they will have the policies that are applicable to them. So you could do it on a computer basis, but more generally it's done on a user basis. So no matter which computer that user uses, those policies will go with that particular employee.